Hello, everyone. My name is Keith Parent. I am the CEO of Foursquare Group. We are about to have the podcast Driving the Business of Science. That's a tagline we've used for a long time. And one of the focuses of this podcast is to try to bring up interesting people that I've met with over time that when you think about the life science vertical and the life science world, everybody thinks about scientists in a lab doing a bunch of things, but there's so much more to helping get drugs to market, getting biologics to market, medical device to market. And you meet a lot of interesting people and a lot of interesting um, companies that are doing work out there. And I think it's really important that people understand what goes into this industry. And by doing that, we have this podcast just so that people can see all of the different functions that are out there and what people do. So today we have a very interesting guest, Kieran Engels from Seuss Plus, and she's a CEO and co-founder. And she and I had a great conversation ahead of time, so I'm looking forward to this podcast. And let's give you a little bit about Foursquare first, so you understand what we're all about. Foursquare is a managed service firm. We manage infrastructure for life science companies. We have what we call ARC. It's an audit-ready compliant cloud, and we can host and manage any application all the way from preclinical through manufacturing. With that being said, we also have what we call RegDocs 365, which is our content repository, hosting any type of clinical and regulatory content. And we have a number of modules with that. But with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Kieran. Kieran, looking forward to this conversation. Give us a little bit of your background and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thanks. Thanks so much for having me. So I'm Kieran Engels, indeed. I am an American, but have been spending the last 3 decades, so 30 years in the Netherlands. I am a co-founder. I co-founded Seuss together with my best friend and business partner. And we're still together and still going strong. And it actually came off the back of working for many years in clinical development on the vendor side. So working in CROs, my business partner had worked in labs. And we saw that the interaction between the sponsor or pharma biotech and their vendors was very crucial, but somehow fraught with challenges. So 15 years ago, we set up Seuss and initially focused on the selection of CROs by pharma and biotech. But over the last 15 years, we've actually come to learn that that was a bit naive, that not all the problems are fixed in the beginning, but actually need to be overseen from beginning to end. We've also learned that we love working with small pharma and biotech because they have an entrepreneurial spirit and get things done, and often don't have the capacity or the teams to do the job that they need to relating to vendors. So that's what we do. We love that interaction. And funnily enough, that when we were in touch together, that the title of this podcast is something that I've been saying for 15 years, is that we work on the business side of science. So our team loves Excel and contracts and invoices and governance and KPIs and metrics and reporting. So from our point of view, the business side of getting an asset from the lab to a commercially viable product. And that's what we do.
And it's interesting because when I talk to my staff, I tell them that we will ourselves never really um, manufacture a new drug product or go out to market and save somebody's life with something we do. But if we as a company can actually help those companies that are doing that, and we can help them get there faster and do a better job at it, that's all
Yeah.
the reward in the world that I need. And that's the kind of stuff that we're trying to do. And every day is trying to make it a little bit easier. I look at the industry and I look at how much they spend on so many crazy things that they spend money on. And I just like, you shake your head at it and now you know why it costs so much to develop a drug product when you see some of the things. And I love your concept of working with the smaller companies only because um, I work with both large and small companies, and I will tell you that the larger they get, the more silos they build up, the more um, hierarchy there is, and the more craziness there is around who has to do what, and everybody's got their little fiefdoms and they're trying to do different things. I also like the fact that the smaller companies are far less risk averse, which can be a good thing and a bad thing. So you have to take the good with the bad, but they're willing to take more of a chance of trying to do new things and trying to build new things into what they're doing to try to get out to market faster. They're always trying to look for money. They're always out there scrambling to try to get some, the next round of uh, um, dollars in the door so they can keep going. With that being said, what you do for them and how you help them is crucial. Talk a little bit more about, that economic side of it. I know you talked about you fell into clinical research. Talk about that aspect of it.
No, I got my master's in health economics, and it was, I mean, I think that most people, when they are 18, 19, 20, early 20s, don't quite know what it is they want to be when they grow up. And I actually sometimes think now, what do I want to be when I grow up? But then I knew it was something economic, it was something to relate to business, and I loved the commercial side of things, how to make money off of this. But it wasn't um, in fast moving consumer goods or in making phones or in any of the exciting technology that was then starting to come around. But I loved this idea of impacting human life. And I tripped and fell into clinical research. I paid for my own studies, my own master's degree, and I needed a job. Like, hand in your thesis, and on Monday I needed a job. It was that urgent. And I so luckily fell into an entrepreneur company who was a vendor for FSP models for clinical research staff, and worked with the most amazing team and was allowed to build different types of things for the company and interact with many big pharma at that moment. But I really saw what it was like to be on the vendor side, and quite transparently, to be easy to manipulate a sales process under that current structure. And those who were good at it were excellent business developers, but really had a very strong hand in steering our clients into how to make those decisions, which didn't seem like the right way, because once we were involved in that relationship, it was often very difficult to align delivery personnel, operations, what was actually being done, aligning finance, aligning contracts. And it got messy, and there got a lot of frustrations on the line. So after doing that for 10 years and really being on that side and almost having jaw-dropping moments of, you're going to spend how much money and we don't actually know what we're going to do, really, that was surprising. And I continued to see that from a global accounts perspective. So when Sabine and I started Seuss, we really wanted to show that the success of a relationship and getting a asset to the next stage, to going to the net inflection point with a smaller biotech from one phase to the next, is not only ensuring that you're proving your endpoints, is not only hitting your timelines or not running out of cash, not only a lot of the things we're afraid of, which is the scientific failure, but that there's a lot of executional failure that sits very firmly in the business side, which is all related to contracts, finance, human interaction, performance, and really governing and overseeing a relationship. So first being very clear on what you need, then contracting for that, qualifying for that, and then overseeing that it's being delivered. And when things start to go off track or differ, because what we all tend to forget is we like to make things simple. We like to make things simple for investors. We like to make things simple for our C-suite and for communications. But doing clinical research from phase 1 to phase 3 or even beyond is not simple when you are setting up a multi-million-dollar company within a very short period of time, and everyone is wearing a different T-shirt because everyone is playing for a different team. So think about any sports team. You put 2 goals down, but everyone is from a different team, and then say, come on, go. And you got to be quick, fast, not make mistakes. And it's not actually clear where the goals are. Maybe there's 25 goals or there are no goals at all. And then we're all wondering why we end up pulling each other's hair out. That's the side of clinical development that we focus on in Seuss, in making sure that it is clear what is it we're needing to have. Therefore, what is any type of vendor going to deliver? Try and cut through some of the sales harmonies, which is beautiful, but it's not helpful in the delivery process. Making sure contracts are clean, clear, and actually covering the risks that we may be facing together or be facing in that relationship. And then controlling the finance along the way, because it's never maliciousness. I have not run into anything, or very, very few things, where I think this is really, really malicious behavior. They're limited, let's say, put it that way. It's never my assumption.
You
But
know, it's
oftentimes it
interesting.
is the situation, and we change the past to accommodate the bad behavior of today. And that's where we need to stop doing. We need to be accountable for what we promise to deliver, and we need to deliver that. And as a sponsor, a pharma, we need to be clear. So if I need you to do these 10 things, I will oversee that you do all those 10 things. And that needs to be clear up front. Otherwise, you're signing off on something you don't know you can do. And I don't think that's fair for either side. So that's what we do at Seuss.
Well, a couple of things you were talking about when I was laughing because when you staying with your team analogy, not only are they on different teams, but everybody thinks that their position is the most important position on the team. So dealing with the personality, sometimes you deal in this industry, particularly if you've got very intelligent scientists and researchers working together. Um, in technology, I feel like sometimes
Uh-huh.
they're the most illiterate technology people I've ever worked with. So, um, they understand their molecules, they understand what they're doing, but they can't log into anything. Um, so we try to make life easy as much as possible for them when we're dealing with those kind of same things. So I understand that, and and I agree with you on the militia stuff. I think that there's a lot of waste in it, not necessarily because they're doing it on purpose, but because and it could be part of those personalities. One of the big things about um, these small biotechs, they all think that sometimes bringing in these people out of big pharma is going to be the end all and be all of, hey, I'm going to know exactly what I need to do this. And all of a sudden somebody comes in that had all these support structures around them and these big tools that they were using at the bigger companies, and they try to put those in place into a small biotech, and it just doesn't work. On many other podcasts, you've heard us talk about the concept of fit for purpose, and there is a concept to that when you're at a certain stage of a company, it's fit for purpose to only do certain things to get yourself to that next level, because
Yeah.
otherwise you are going to run out of cash. So the concept of the healthcare economics that you're talking about right now is so important to understand. How do you put that in place early on so that you can have kind of a discipline around that economic aspect, so that when you get to the point where you can start to go to the next place, if I am going to do multi-country studies or I'm going to do other things like that, you've got to be able to plan for that. But you've got to get to that milestone. If you don't ever get to that milestone, they flame out. And
Yep.
there's so much good technology out there, so many good ideas about new medicines that can help people, that you just hate to see somebody flame out because they didn't do something right, and maybe they were going to get some cash infusion from a big pharma, and all of a sudden their numbers didn't look right, and it just went, somebody pulled the plug on them, and then
Yeah.
they're just gone. The nice
I
part is
think
there
that
are a lot of new firms out there that are looking at assets that did flame out and things like that, and they resurrect them sometimes, and they bring them back to life. So
yeah.
there's a lot of things happening in the industry around that. So
I think what you mentioned about fit for purpose, sorry, and then I'll let you ask your question. What you mentioned about fit for purpose, I think, is one of the really exciting things that we've been seeing since E6R3 has become more audible in our industry. We as a company, so when we set up in 2012, from our point of view, how we have been driving selection, setup, oversight, contracts, qualifications, has always been in the same philosophy. But when R2 came out, I see it's GCP R2, E6R2 came out, we were like, yay! And now the law agrees with us. But we didn't really see a big change in behavior. But with R3, we actually are seeing movement, which for us is very exciting, because one of the things about fit for purpose is really a beautiful application of risk management. And what we're seeing now is the way to manage risks is trickling through the different layers, from executives to operational teams, to sponsor operational teams, to actually the CROs and the vendors. But it is a gorgeous tool. And I've in the past written quite a few articles. I love risk, because it actually, and risk management, because it helps us to prioritize and to agree across all of the different jerseys, even on all of the different accountability layers. What are the risks we're actually going to put resource in and do something about, and do it at the same time? And what are the risks we're going to say, yes, it's a risk, and we're going to let it be. And we're going to accept that it's a risk, but we can't do everything because of limited cash or limited time or limited resource or low likelihood. And what are the ones we will just signal? If this signal happens, we then will do something about it. And it's really helped. We've seen it across the last, I would say, 8 years, really helped different vendor sponsor relationships to align. What are we actually going to focus on? Because the more layers we get and the more communication channels we have, the less aligned we tend to be. So governance and risk management work hand in hand to be fit for purpose. It also allows us to do less, but still be focusing on the things that are important. I love that regulations are not about doing it all perfectly, but it is really about consciously thinking, what are the things that are the biggest risks? And yes, patient safety is always a main priority. And we love that data integrity has become also a main priority, even more than it was in the past. This application of risk allows us to prioritize in certain areas. And already a few regulation versions ago, selecting a vendor, contracting a vendor, and qualifying a vendor on the basis of this is what we need has been required. But I think that now we're really starting to see a shift in how companies are doing that, because putting your requirements before picking your partner makes the relationship that much better. So it's like the world is starting to work according or understand why we've been so adamant about pushing this. And that's an exciting place. So it is requiring change and hard work on multiple layers from both CROs and CDMOs and labs to be delivering in a different way, which I think is actually more value for money and really important for the smaller biotech who don't have so much power to actually change the way things are happening in these bigger vendors. Not like a big pharma would have an impact if they demand something differently.
So tell me a little bit. So where is your client base? Is it typically an EU-based client base, or are you doing a lot of stuff in the States?
We're doing a lot of stuff in the States. Actually, the last 4 clients we've signed have all been US based. And currently it's a 50-50 split actually. I would say 10 years ago, we've had a lot more European clients. And I always say Europe with a very big circle around it because it's a broad base. But over the last 5 to 6 years, that has expanded to be equally in the United States and Canada and Europe, again, with a very big circle, so many countries. But the studies that our clients run are global. So Australia, China, so a lot of Asia, some countries in Africa, North America, South America, Central America, and Europe. So our work is all over the globe. We have staff members all over the globe, but the most of our clients are in Europe and the US.
How has that impacted your, healthcare economics aspect of what you do from a financial perspective, working with your clients, particularly if they're going to be multi-country and global in nature? I know that we've got a number of clients, whether they're global laboratories or commercial supply chain companies or CROs that are dealing on a global basis. Where it seems like we're on the clock all the time now, dealing with meetings across the globe. How are you guys handling that, and how is that affecting the economics aspect of what you bring to the table for your clients?
I think I can answer that question about 7 different ways. So let me start one, and if it's not right, you can tell me, no, I meant something else. So how the economic side. So for our clients, we mainly look at where teams actually are, their team, their vendors, and where their vendor teams would be. Sometimes it's actually an American client where it's actually really helpful that we're in Europe, because a substantial portion of their vendor is also here. At other times we are sitting in the same location that our client is because of having a much broader reach in availability together. We also have team members in Hong Kong working with a client in Israel who is also has team members in the US. That's puzzles. Then there are slots that we like 1-hour slots that are potentially available, and there's always someone stretched. But I think that that's the daily practice of our clients in any case. So our clients are generally all virtual. They may have offices, but many of them are commuting back and forth. They have at least a few team members that are virtual. Not everyone is sitting in an office, and that changed in 2020. We were, up until 2020, a lot of our work was face-to-face, and we were with a lot of clients in their offices. That the world changed for us, but also then the access and availability, and also the needs to have a more structured and intense sounds like volume, but I'm more a tighter interaction between the vendor teams and our clients, and much more clarity about what needs to be done because you couldn't just pop into each other's office.
Well,
So we've
combining a couple of those topics, we talked about, 2020 and beyond with COVID hitting and all that kind of stuff and everybody going remote. And the issue that we talked about a little bit earlier about risk. I think that also helped to drive for us, it was a technology risk and people were able to take a more of a flyer on, hey, I need to do this remote now. How can I do this? Or I need to have an outside service being able to take some of these blood draws or do what they need to do or how they're going to do it. Have you seen that as a help or a hindrance to some of the things that you're working with your clients?
yeah. Sorry, could you repeat that last question again? Because
Do
I
you
was with
think
you.
that do you think that the attitude toward risk and the
Mm.
ability to be more remote is a help or a hindrance to the clients now when they're trying to do more things with disparate teams all over the world?
I think it's been a help in terms of access to expertise that will help them or capacity that they need. I think it's actually been more a positive than a negative because what I was seeing 10 years ago was because what I've been looking at for the last 25 years, but at least for the last 15, is that at the end of any trial of any contracts, people will look back and say, oh, the other did this wrong. The vendor was bad, etc., or this was bad, or it was because the team member was in this country, which was bad for whatever reason. Could be because of time zone, could be because of culture, could be, but there's always something found to blame. But when you walk it back, it's actually oftentimes that decision was made because of how close they were to them or because of traditional models. The fact that we are not no longer worried so much about where someone is sitting gives us the potential to choose someone who is better, who has better capacity, better located, or is more expert area. So I think that gives us a lot more strength. The downside is that it's giving us also, we can work anytime, anywhere, all the time. And you mentioned at the beginning of the call that biotechs are always looking for money. I would say vendors, I am one of those, is always looking for money. We're always looking for projects, right? I would say, if anyone, it's more us as vendors than our clients who go through waves. We're now in fundraising. Now we need to achieve this data package with this amount of money, and that's what we got. And we think we've got a good plan, and now we need to do it. So deploying that capital once it's raised is their job. That's where the stress lies, right? But once they are in that, they're not always looking for money. They're looking for the best way to do things and what is the smartest way. So I think the disparate and localized version of working together virtually is hugely valuable for smaller biotech. It's just given a very large workload or a very long workday or a very big access because you can be anywhere for anyone. And entrepreneurs do that anyway. You will recognize that. I do too.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And biotechs is probably why our team also loves working with biotechs, is that everyone has that same higher appetite for risk because we're all more entrepreneurial than we are rule following and conservative following. But we all want to do it really well. And we're working with scientists and people. We're tunnel vision. Entrepreneurs are like, this has got to work, right? This is going to work. Risk management forces us to look at what can all go wrong and then decide where are we going to, what are we going to protect ourselves from. So the fact that we are, you, me, our clients, so the smaller biotech and pharma, are more accepting of risk doesn't mean that we have a better handle on it, but we are more willing to learn. And I think that's where the difference is. Big pharma has had risk management for many years. We are trying to find a way, and our clients are trying to find a way, and we are helping them to integrate that risk management in a way that actually reduces that workload or reduces the stress of doing everything perfectly.
Well, with that being said, what's kind of the ideal client profile for you? What are the kind of clients that anybody watching this podcast today, if they're out there and they have a need, what would you say to them as this is how we can help you?
You first asked the ideal clients. So our very big favoritists are, as I said, small pharma and biotech. So anywhere between, and generally we see 3 to 50 employees at any stage, either entering phase 1, so entering clinical development, or all the way through to phase 3, and then BLAs are going for commercial or exits. We really play in clinical development area. So from very early stage to later stage, and work on the vendor management side. And where I think the biggest value is those who are scientifically strong, medically strong, are great, but it's the business side and the transactional side. They're going to deploy their capital or spend a lot of money, and are going to rely on those relationships to achieve the goals they've promised their investors. And that's where we come in. We spend a lot of time saving money, structuring, making sure it's clear, understanding what's going to be done. Is the timeline feasible? Where are the weaknesses? Where are the risks we're taking? And then going through the labyrinth anyway together with them. So our team is supplemental. It's not just if you don't have enough capacity, but what I see many companies doing is finding one person who's going to run all of it. And what I've learned, and happily, I'm already ecstatic if what you have is one person going to manage all of your vendors across all functions, because at least it's happening consistently, and at least you have everyone who is more content strong or content heavy actually being supported by a business person. But I would also say by having that housed in one person, they will be very good at one or two things. But in order to manage a vendor or a business relationship, there are multiple expertises that are needed. It is also about finance and invoice and checking of inflations and unit prices and really financial based. It is KPI and reporting. It is communications and alignment. It is project management. It is on an executive level to all levels in an organization. It requires different expertise. So what we've learned, I don't want to be hired and ever do that by myself for anyone, because I will be horrible at 60% of the work, because I'm not good at that. I have certain skills that we deliver that are good, that are helpful, but I need a multifaceted team to do it well. And that's what we've been developing for 15 years. They can buy one and get all of those pieces that they need without having to manage it themselves, manage that whole process, and having to have 4 different slices, fractional expertise together, because that's what we've been doing. You can centralize vendor management with these multiple expertises without having to hire a whole team, because that's unreasonable. Then you're spending far too much money of your hard-won funds to do something that is, then it's not fit for purpose. And I'll be the first one to say it. That is not fit for purpose. This way it is. You're in control of it. You're overseeing it like guidelines say. You actually are getting what you need. The biggest frustration that I see within biotech teams is that they are frustrated that they're not listened to, that they don't understand why things are not changing. They can identify issues, but their suppliers aren't, and the suppliers are waiting for things to blow up. Oftentimes it started so much earlier that it wasn't clear what was going to be delivered. It wasn't clear what capacity was needed. That can be a vendor issue, that they didn't correctly apply capacity. But if it's not clear they needed to, then that fault sat much earlier of the lack of clarity. And from a vendor side, the fault sits with them for not demanding more clarity. But I get it, right? You need a contract signed. You're in BD, you need a contract signed. But that's where the problems come from. And if we perpetuate that, we end up in difficult waters together, which is a shame, because I don't think that that's necessary. I think that sometimes you need to have the difficult conversations with both parties, and that works. So that's what I would say. I think that was a long-winded answer. Sorry, Keith.
Well, I can tell you point blank that I know plenty of my customers that I've had over the years. I've been doing this for 31 years, and both big and small could potentially use your services, because there's many times.
Introduce them.
Oh, don't worry. I will.
Okay.
People know, and I'll probably be mentioning you on other podcasts as we do these things. So, and I like to actually hook up different vendors that I work with specifically, because I think that's a good thing. I think when you see somebody that does a great job for somebody, it's great to be referring them into other people. So, to me, I think that's a great way to do it. And, and again, if you see good science and you want that good science to prosper and get to patients, they've got to understand the business side of things, and they've got to understand how to get to the next level. And if they don't, they flame out. It does no good for anybody, whether it's the investors, whether it's the patients, whether it's the employees in the company themselves. It's such a loss for everybody. So, we love to help people get over the hump and get them to the next level. And that's what I think that I hear out of you from the perspective of helping them to get past the issues that they may have as they go out there and do that work. Well, as we're
Yeah.
coming up on time, I'd love to hear just your last thoughts and anything you want to share with the audience out there in for the Zeus Plus. Tell me a little bit more. What do you want people to know about you and remember?
Oh, wow. That's a big question, Keith. What about that? Um, Oftentimes a situation that we are asked either to come help set up better, which is our preferred, of course. Therefore, we are in control and have successful relationships, not friction free, but successful relationships across the board. But sometimes we're asked to come in when it really feels like there's nothing going to be saved. It's never going to be fixed. And yes, we've done a few rescues, and it's been better for everyone that there are rescues. But there are many situations that are fixable, and it is about being clear on what is broken, what needs to be fixed, how we're going to measure it, and who is involved, and what are the financial consequences to that. These types of conversations need to be happening. It doesn't mean that your medics, your scientists, your project managers internally need to be in control of all of that. It does need to happen, but it doesn't need to be something you have to have internally. It actually is sometimes very helpful to have them externally, because it's helpful to also have someone who is not going to worry about breaking colleague relationships. Let's say you and I are colleagues. I'm like, Keith, don't ever do that again. This is what happened. Don't do that again. You and I are going to have a problem at our next team meeting, and you're going to be like, bleh. When our team doesn't live in the biotech or in the vendor camp, and therefore we can be very direct and honest to both sides, making sure that everyone is clear. And that is super, super valuable, because it's not about always being nice to each other. It is about being clear. So I think for me, my American background, my enthusiasm, my yes, cool, and no problem too big is wonderful, in combination with my Dutch directness, where it's like, oh no, this is really poor. That combination is also very much in Zeus. It's how we have a company of many transplants. We like the cultural differences, and we understand that sometimes having friction-filled conversations will help us get through the next stage, and that is important. So driving business means being transparent, clear on what you need, and clear on overseeing that it's being done. And yes, vendors need to deliver what they promise. And that needs to be clear in your contracts, that there's consequences, and driving those through. So
Well,
that's what we do.
this has been a great conversation, and again, driving the business of science. I know that it was
I'm
near
with you.
to your heart, so it's near to mine. I do it from a technology angle. You're doing it from
Exactly.
the financial and the economics angle. I think they both are very needed for many of these companies. So I wish you well in everything you do, and I'm looking forward to working with you in the future.
I look forward to that too, Keith.
And everybody, thank you all for joining us again. This has been Driving the Business of Science podcast. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.